In 1977, a researcher watching dolphins in a Soviet naval facility noticed something that shouldn't have been possible. The dolphins were asleep and swimming at the same time, which meant that somewhere inside those animals, half of a brain was doing something that, at the time, we had no framework to explain. Sleep, as far as science was concerned, was a whole brain event. You went under. All of you. The lights went out, the body went still, and consciousness stepped away for a few hours. That was the deal. It had been the deal for every animal studied up to that point. And it made a certain kind of sense because sleep is vulnerable. You can't run from a predator while you're unconscious. You can't swim to the surface to breathe. For an air-breathing animal living in the open ocean, real sleep, the kind we recognized, should have been impossible. And yet, there were the dolphins. What the researcher had stumbled onto was unihemispheric slow-wave sleep, a state where one hemisphere of the brain enters deep sleep while the other stays awake, alert enough to control swimming, to monitor the surface, to watch for danger. The sleeping half and the waking half then switch, back and forth, trading off, until both halves have rested. It's sleep, just not as we knew it. And dolphins didn't evolve it recently. The fossil record suggests that the ancestors of modern cetaceans, whales, dolphins, porpoises, began moving permanently into the water around 50 million years ago, which means unihemispheric sleep is at least that old. A solution to an impossible problem running quietly inside the brains of ocean mammals for tens of millions of years before a researcher in 1977 finally noticed it. But dolphins aren't the only ones, and unihemispheric sleep isn't the only solution. See, the problem of sleeping underwater didn't emerge once. It emerged repeatedly, across entirely separate lineages, across hundreds of millions of years of evolution. And each time, life found a different answer, which tells us something important not just about how animals sleep, but about what sleep actually is. Take the sperm whale. Unlike dolphins, sperm whales appear to sleep with both hemispheres at once, the same whole brain shutdown that land mammals use. And when they do, they sink. Vertically, motionless, hanging just below the surface in tight groups, completely still, for around 10 to 15 minutes at a time. Researchers first documented this behavior in 2008 off the coast of Sri Lanka, when a sailing vessel accidentally drifted into the middle of one of these resting pods. The whales didn't react. They were, by every behavioral measure, unconscious. This kind of sleep in sperm whales is thought to account for only around 7% of their day, far less than most mammals. But it appears to be deep, genuine, whole brain rest. How they manage the breathing problem remains an open question. The leading hypothesis is that the slow, gentle rise and fall of their buoyancy means they naturally drift toward the surface often enough to breathe without fully waking. But we don't know for certain. And that uncertainty matters because it means that even for one of the most studied groups of animals on Earth, the mechanics of sleep are still not fully mapped. Then there are the fish. Fish don't sleep the way mammals do. They have no neocortex, the brain region most associated with the slow-wave activity we identify as sleep in mammals. For a long time, this led scientists to assume fish simply didn't sleep. Not really. They rested, maybe. They slowed down. But sleep? That was a mammal thing, a bird thing, a land thing. It turns out that assumption was wrong. In 2019, researchers studying zebrafish found clear evidence of sleep states, including something that looked remarkably like REM sleep, the deep, dreaming phase associated in humans with memory consolidation and emotional processing. The zebrafish would go still, their muscle tone would drop, and their brain activity would shift into patterns that had no business showing up in an animal without a neocortex. Which meant one of two things. Either sleep evolved independently in fish and in mammals, arriving at similar solutions from completely different starting points. Or sleep is far, far older than we thought, ancient enough to predate the split between fish and the lineage that would eventually crawl onto land and become us. The current evidence leans toward the second option. And if it's correct, it means that sleep isn't a land adaptation at all. It began in the water. The ocean wasn't a place where nothing slept. It was where sleep was invented. Which brings us back to the dolphins in 1977. Because what made that discovery so disorienting wasn't just that the dolphins were asleep and swimming at the same time. It was what it implied about the nature of sleep itself. If sleep can be split between hemispheres, parceled out, traded off if it can happen in fish without a neocortex, or in whales hanging motionless in the dark, then sleep isn't one thing. It's a family of solutions to a shared problem. The problem of a brain that needs to rest without stopping being a brain. Every animal in the ocean that sleeps is running a different version of that solution. And the fact that so many versions exist, across so many lineages, across so many hundreds of millions of years, suggests that whatever sleep is doing for a brain, whatever essential work it is carrying out in the dark, it is doing something so important that life has found a way to protect it even in the most hostile environment on Earth. Forbes thought the deep ocean was lifeless because nothing could survive its conditions. He was wrong about that too.